Hey there, welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show. If you are tired of chasing buy-in, frustrated by teams who just can't seem to get on the same page, or over the constant struggle of holding people accountable without feeling like you're micromanaging, this is the show for you. I'm Casey Watts, team leadership expert and the host of this show. I specialize in clarity, collaboration, and character, and I help leaders just like you take teams from chaos to cohesion, from frustration to alignment, so teams can actually work together toward a common purpose instead of against each other as though they are functioning in different organizations. Whether you lead a single team or a team of teams, on this show, we talk about strategies that are going to help you create a culture where accountability and autonomy go hand in hand. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation and build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Catching Up with Casey show. I am pumped to have you guys here on the show to listen in. I have with me tonight Julianne Lang, and we are going to be talking shop about leadership. So welcome to the show, Julianne.
Hi, Casey. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and tonight we're talking about the grit factor, how strong character fuels leadership success. And if you have been with me as a listener for any length of time, then you know that one of the core components that I often talk about that creates cohesive, vision-driven teams is character and the strong building of character. So, Julianne, why don't you take a moment to tell us a little bit about who you are and what brings you to the show?
Sure. Thanks so much. My name is Julianne Lang. I am the school leader at Lowcountry Leadership Charter School. It's a tuition-free K-12 public charter school in South Carolina. I'm based just south of Charleston, so it's beautiful. We had a beautiful day today. It's been a little chilly lately, and so we were blessed with great weather. And I've been at my school 12 years. Prior to that, I taught in a traditional system by way of middle school English. That was my area of teaching. And then after that, I started to become a behavior coach. I was trained in PBIS and got very invested in behavior, and then pursued administration, and have really had an awesome journey getting to see a charter school from its foundation and inception through construction and opening all the way to where we are now. And so I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, our stories seem pretty similar because the charter school that I previously worked at, I joined that charter school when they were opening a new building. Uh-huh. So yeah, and it's such an amazing experience to see and be a part of. And it makes you just want to stay there, like there's Absolutely. Something about that, about sticking with something like that you helped to build. So I want to start tonight, before we dig into the content, asking you some this or that questions. Okay. So 2 of them are definitely just personal life related, and then 2 of them are very much teams related. So my first one is, do you prefer a road trip, or do you prefer to fly to your destination?
Oh, fly all day. Yeah. All day long. I want to roll up to security, get on the plane. I like my snack and my beverage, and I'll see you there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go to the airport, are you one of those people that you have the bag and it's got all the stuff that you might need?
I would say yes and no. I am not an over thinker when it comes to packing. I like to leave some things up to spontaneity and see how things go. So I'm not the one who packs the snacks and the meal and things like that. I'll bring everything I need and then figure out the rest.
Yeah. Okay. It's very similar to me. I try to get through security with as little baggage as possible, but also, once you get seated and you're waiting for your flight, it's you want to have all the stuff.
Right.
Okay, so here's the next question. Would you rather have, this is a good one. Would you rather have the ability to read minds or to be completely unreadable?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say the ability to read minds. I have a pretty good poker face, so I think I'm already tough to read sometimes. But I would say that a lot of what I focus on, especially with our teams, is empathy and wanting to understand others. And I think the more we understand each other and the more we communicate, the more powerful our teams can be, and the more effective we can be as a group serving kids. And so I would say the ability to read minds for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Do you prefer, this is teams related, do you prefer a highly structured team with clear expectations or a more flexible, free flowing team?
I prefer a more free flowing team, particularly for creativity and innovation. I think you have to give the space for people to think and speak and provide input. And the teams that I work with currently, we're K-12, and we actually have a preschool next door. So age 3 to 18 is our student population, and our faculty is very diverse as well. And so that's a lot of different mindsets and opinions. And I think that's a good thing, that not everyone should think just like me, and that there's so much value in what the team can contribute. And so I would say definitely giving them the space to do that.
Yeah. Final one. When making decisions, do you primarily rely on instinct or data?
I think it depends on what type of decisions. If I'm focused on instruction, data is key.
Mm-hmm.
And, data is key. Um, with behavior, I think in some situations you have to be able to feel and assess and make a decision on the spot, especially if you have a student in need. And so I think a little bit of both, depending on what it is. I think data is very powerful, especially over time, but sometimes in the moment you've just got to feel it out.
Yeah, it's so interesting as I've started to ask these questions, which I've only done this for a few episodes, this or that series, but people can very easily answer the first two, and then the second two that are related to like teams or leadership.
Mhm.
Almost every person says, "Ooh, I think it depends. It depends on the
It
situation." And
does.
it's so true, but I love to hear some of the ideas that people have and some of the contributions that they bring to those ideas for this or that. So let's dig into the content for tonight. Tonight's episode is titled The Grit Factor: How Strong Character Fuels Leadership Success. So I want to ask you a little bit about your book first and foremost. Let's get that on the table. Tell everyone about your book, and I want you to share just a little bit about what caused you to write the book and the message that it brings to readers.
Sure. Thank you. The book is titled Cup of Courage: The Key to Leading with Grace and Grit. And it just came out this past month, and I'm very proud of it. It's the first book that I've published. And just a little backstory about me. I started in administration at a very young age. I graduated high school early, college early. I was in a big hurry. And by age 23, I was the assistant principal of a school.
Wait, hold on. I just
Yeah.
need people to let that sink in for a little bit. 23
Yes.
assistant principal. That's a
I was
story in
a
and of itself.
baby, yes, I was a baby. And during that time, I was also, working very hard, invested in the opening of a school, major commitment there, and with my career and profession. But at the same time, I also was dealing with a lot of personal adversity. And 2 years into my marriage, at the age of 26, I lost my husband to cancer. It was a very sudden situation, and I was 7.5 months pregnant with our daughter at the time. And facing some of those challenges and opportunities, like the role that I had in my career at the time, the weight of guiding the school, personal loss, and things like that, it really shaped who I am today and the type of leader that I am, and how I, lead with empathy, and the ways that I build a team. And so the book is a little bit about that. It is a professional development book, so I don't go too much in detail about personal loss. I do discuss it in the book, and I feel like maybe there's more to come to share that story as time goes on. But the book particularly is a guide for school leaders. It would be great for emerging school leaders as well, to talk about challenges that I've faced in leadership, and the solutions and ideas that leaders can take away in those moments. And, if anybody can take something from what I've experienced and learned to benefit others, that's really the goal. And so it's just recently come out, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That is a huge success. I don't know that people always understand exactly how much effort it takes to write a book from start to finish, and all of the little nitty-gritty details that go into it. But I imagine for you too, so much of that was reliving some of the experiences that you've had, and you have had quite the life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say definitely. And also, I think for me, a lot of late nights in administration. It's long hours. We do a heavy lift day to day, with the needs of schools, and just thinking through conflicts and resolutions and situations that we went through, and challenges that any school faces. And lots of me just journaling late at night, writing things down. I got to remember that. I got to remember that. I need to save that for later. And then to see it come together in a way, it was really neat.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. And I can't wait to get my hands on the book. And I'm really going to encourage our readers to go to Amazon, purchase the book, leave a review. I will say, that is something that I just have to get out there to people. Like, please, no matter what books you read, go and leave reviews for the authors. They need those reviews. So we need those reviews. So let's talk about grit in leadership. Like, I'm fascinated by your story already, but I know that we have some content to get into, and so much of your leadership journey has required grit. How do you define it, and why do you think it's so critical for leaders, especially today?
Well, there's no doubt that it is critical for leaders today. I feel like the work that we do now is so much greater even than it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago in administration. The role that a school plays is beyond what it used to. And there's no doubt that not just for survival, but also to thrive in your role, that grit is needed. And the way that I view grit is that grit is really the fuel that keeps leaders moving forward when the road gets tough. And there are lots of times in school leadership that the road can get tough, whether it's interpersonal relationships in the staff, or a parent to teacher situation, or a student matter, or something going on in the community, or something that your data is indicating in your school. There's so many things that can be challenging in a building. And grit, to me, is really not just about working hard. It is about working hard, but it's not just about that. It's about working through the hard, and not letting the things that are hard get to you in a way where you can't make sound decisions or think things through clearly, and continue to grow and lead. And we talk all the time, and in here in leadership, you need your vision. What's your vision? Share your vision. And I believe that wholeheartedly, but I think grit is just about so much more than that. You have to have the resilience to navigate a setback. and do that with grace. And so I think for me, just continuing to take that next step, continuing to push forward despite things that might feel scary or intimidating or challenging, or you might not know exactly what to do. You know, leaders don't always have to have every single answer to everything, but you have to continue to fuel, you know, the passion and work through the difficult things.
Yeah, everything that you're saying, it's like the things that you don't learn about
Mhm.
in your education or even in your career. Like you can have experiences and learn from those experiences, but unless you have somebody coming alongside you and teaching you about these things, it's, you know, some people can learn as they go and come away with these big thoughts, like these thought leadership ideas that you have come to. But then for a lot of people, they just never have the time or brain capacity to be able to come to those realizations. So I would imagine that's one reason your book is so valuable, is pointing those things out very specifically. Um, in your book, you highlight both leading with grace and grit, which is kind of what you just said.
Mhm.
How do leaders strike that balance? Because you have to balance the compassion, but also holding high expectations. Talk a little bit about that.
You're right. You know, it is all about the balance, and you know, to your last point too. I think another piece that really helps fuel me to be passionate about this topic is to really try to prevent the high turnover rate in administration right now. I don't know about your state, but in South Carolina right now, the turnover rate for administrators is higher than it's ever been.
Mhm.
In 2020, it hit a peak and it's topped that number every year since. And the pipeline to administration, you know, there's not as many people pursuing it as they're used to. But in addition to that, you know, to really have success, you have to have longevity in your building. And especially for an administrator, it takes so much time to even get off the ground. I can't imagine, you know, continuing to change schools every few years. And right now, the rate of principals leaving the profession is very, very high, and so that certainly fuels my passion for this topic too, to try to help, especially with decision making and self care for administrators, so they can you know, work through it and be successful. And you know, with your question about the balance, for me, I really see, you know, we're talking about grace and grit. With grace, I think that's how much empathy and value you show to every stakeholder in your building, whether that's your families, your students, your staff, and others around you. And the grit is the weight you carry, right? How much you can handle,
Mhm.
how to accept those challenges without fear, to be very, very bold, and take action, be actionable. I think the balance between the two requires a little bit of finesse. You know, you have lots of plates in the air at the same time, and for leaders, I think you have to know your clientele. Um, Knowing your staff and students through true, authentic relationships is really, I think, the key to that. And a lot of what's in the book too is empathy boosters, culture builders, ways to build rapport, quick takeaways you can do, reflection questions so that you as a leader can think through how you've handled a situation. And I think there's not always a simple answer. Sometimes you have to make a decision. My teachers in lower elementary might need something different than my high school staff.
Yeah.
And, you know, having the ability to balance both is really important.
Yeah, I love that you talk about grace and grit with that word empathy,
Mhm.
and I see a correlation in our two books, but a very, very small piece of mine. I talk about this leadership target model, and what we're striving for is that midpoint where we can hold people accountable without micromanaging,
Mhm.
which requires you to be empathetically assertive. Um, but you have to have strong character to be able to do that. So I just want to ask you what role you feel like character development plays in becoming this strong, effective leader, because everything you're saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, that takes time for people. and awareness for them to be able to develop, right? So what role do you feel like character development plays in leadership?
I think character development is critical. Um, when we talk about building leadership skills and developing a leader, it reminds me, and I'm a coffee enthusiast. My blog on Instagram is called Leadership with a Latte, and I'm drinking a coffee right now at 8:00 at night. Coffee is life. But I feel like developing a team without developing character, or talking about character and building those habits is like decaf coffee. Like, what's the point?
Yes.
What's the point in that? But I think for me, it's in the daily decisions. It does not happen overnight. These are not things that you can just cultivate. It has to happen over a long period of time. And so I try to model a lot of character, especially with adults. We always say, adults can be our toughest students in the building, because students are students and they haven't formulated all of their own necessarily opinions on everything. And they're not quite as mature and have the life experience that adults have. And so adults are sometimes our most challenging group to train and discuss and lead with, and have on the same page in terms of mindset and things like that. And so I think it absolutely can be cultivated in the building. Character definitely can, but only if you're willing to put in the practice, only if you're willing to continue to show up, to model the behavior, to discuss your decision-making and the why behind things that you're doing, and have longevity in your school. I know I talked about the turnover rate a minute ago. When you think about building character and culture in your building as well, in South Carolina, they say it takes 5 years to open a charter school, because it takes that long to see a full cycle through of a group of students, and to make sure that that your foundation is strong. And so I think in terms of that, character development plays such a huge role. And there are lots of ways you can do that with students and adults, but I think it has to be at the forefront with your team.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wholeheartedly agree with that. This show is all about building cohesive teams. And I think character is a huge part of that. And unfortunately, I find that we don't spend near enough time on it, definitely at the leadership level, but also at the team level. But if we don't, then we are sure to experience some resistance and challenges along the way. And our time is going to be sucked up by all of those challenges, which kind of
you're exactly right. We and I'll give you just a quick example. This school year, in the southern part of South Carolina, the southeastern part, the beginning of the school year's professional development and training was canceled and moved remotely because of some hurricanes. And so schools in our area missed the first 3 days of PD with our teachers. They had to be remote trainings, and virtual, and we only get 5 days. So more than half of our time, that would have been spent on things like that, was taken up outside of our control. And then the time that our teachers did have to get started, we of course wanted to give them time in their classrooms. And so we weren't going to usurp that time to do PD. They needed to be there for their kids. And so it was so tough. And there were so many topics this year that I felt like we were just chasing. We were chasing those topics. We're like, oh, we got to train that. Oh, we need to talk about this. We need to do this in team meeting. And it's February now, and we're already planning fall training for next year and talking about, okay, what are those critical things? What did we not get to get the opportunity to do and train? Because it is so important. So you are exactly right. It came up today in leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is a dream of mine that at the beginning of the year, teams would spend time like doing maybe not necessarily full on personality assessments, but something to the extent of really getting to understand your team on a very professional, like, work level. So you know exactly, like, what is it that my teammates need from me and I need from them, so that we're not having to spend a whole lot of time later on down the road trying to fill in those gaps because we just don't know what our teams need. But if you were able to do that, then let's say some of those, like, things that happen that we don't plan for, like hurricanes, we know in the moment how we're going to approach it. So I want to ask you about some challenges that you've faced as a leader, and how do you feel like grit and grace has helped you to navigate those?
That's a good question. There have been many challenges and opportunities to grow. I always see them as opportunities to grow, and I love a challenge. I think it's natural for me to take challenges head on. I'm a middle child. I hear that's a middle child thing, that we just have a tendency to do that. So even at a young age, I was always Mrs. Responsible. But there have been many things that I've faced personally and professionally that have been growth opportunities for me that have shaped my leadership professionally. As a charter school leader, what we do is often beyond the role of a traditional principal. We manage facilities, finance, operations, governance, and instruction, and all the other school tasks. And so having the amazing opportunity to open and help open a school — I was the assistant principal at the time — was such a wonderful opportunity. But it was not easy. Our very first year at our school, we were delayed. We had a delayed start. We had delayed construction, and school was planned to start in mid-August. It did not start until mid-September. We had to add days on to the end of the year. We had to add an extra hour a day to make up enough instructional minutes during that year. And the local newspaper said it rained twice in the summer of 2013, once for 35 days and once for 45 days. And the rain just crushed us. And so we actually ended up having to move into a temporary facility until December of that year. And so our first days of school were actually in a local church. Our first week of school didn't even count for instruction. We had to do summer camp because they hadn't approved the building yet, but parents needed a place for their children to go. All the summer camps were done for the year. Everybody else had already gone back to school. And so it was a crazy challenge. We moved the whole building twice. Think of every chair, every table, every teacher desk, every textbook. Twice we moved that year, and immediately started construction again because we were already too full. And it was wild. It was, looking back now at the things that we did during that time is really comical. I mean, we did anything to help get the school open and to get kids in the building. In South Carolina, we have a organization called the Office of School Facilities. That's who approves the buildings for schools. And before we were in the temporary school, we were still at the church, they didn't have a fire alarm system. And so they weren't going to allow us to start school there, understandably. And we had to create a human fire alarm system. And our first 3 days of school, we had to have volunteers. I took shifts as well, around the clock during school hours, to rotate throughout the building and sniff every 7 seconds for a fire. And we would sniff and have our air horn. We had this big air horn that we would, in the event that we needed to have a fire drill, we would walk around with the air horn. And so we had our air horn in our clipboard and all of our things. And we had a human fire alarm, and active for days. I mean, people would just take an hour or two at a time. We had parents coming in, and I'm here for fire duty. And you couldn't stand in any one place. You had to constantly be moving. And that's just, a tiny piece of that story. But the things that we did just to make sure that kids had a place to go to school, and that families had a safe place and a high performing school for their students to attend in an area that is very rural. Our school is very rural, that they didn't have before. It was so important and just worth the work. We did the craziest stuff. Like, we loaded thousands of textbooks back and forth. I don't even know how many times. We had parent work days. We had, and our staff was so invested too. Every person just believed in our mission and what we were trying to accomplish, and would really just do anything for the building. And I learned that leadership's not about having perfect circumstances. That's for sure. We had lunch on the lawn. We didn't even have a roof, but just about having courage to keep moving forward. And I've had many experiences like that since, through the growth of our school and a variety of projects, and from those to accreditations and all sorts of things. A lot of professional experiences. And I will say faith and perseverance helped me through those professionally. And, personally, as a school leader, I have faced hard decisions, all day, every day, but nothing has been harder than waking up to, lead your own life after loss. And grit is what got me out of bed.
Yeah.
It's what kept me showing up for my students, my staff, my own daughter who was on the way.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, after my late husband passed, waking up the next morning, and I had to go get checked. I had to go to the doctor. They wanted to make sure she was okay and that I was okay. And I remember saying, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and it's time to step up. It's going to be me. Let's go. And so the circumstances, surrounding that situation were, obviously so tragic and shocking, and things like that. And I was given so much support and grace from my administrative team, from the teachers, from the community, from the families at my school, and from my family as well. And being given that grace when I was going through something so challenging is really what reminded me, like, okay, it's okay to be human. It's okay to lean on other people and to find strength in your vulnerability. Like, you can get back up again, and even blossom and be stronger than you were before. It was not easy. It was not an easy journey. And now we're 8 years later that I'm able, there was a time where I couldn't even talk about it without just falling apart. But I think grit is what really, like, got me out of bed every day. And adversity kind of had a way of, like, redefining me and who I was. I will say, before I went through loss and grief, I definitely had some leadership tendencies that I needed to work on. I think it's important to be vulnerable too, and talk about those things. I was a little sharp. I had some sharp edges for a long time with students and staff and families, probably, I was. And that experience taught me what really matters, and kind of, like, stripped away things that were unnecessary and forced me to lead from an authentic place. There was a time where it took everything I had to get out of bed in the morning and get ready and show up for kids. And then when you see them, you got to give them your best. And so if I could walk through that with purpose, I know that other people have the strength to do it too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking, all I can think about is the moments of adversity are sometimes awful and tragic, and it's hard to see, almost impossible probably, to see, like, what could come of this in the aftermath, but man, I just admire your strength and courage to get up and show up. And I know that had to have been such an inspiration, and still is. Even, like, I know when people read your book, it's just such an inspiration to keep going. And I have been chatting with a principal she's been a principal for, maybe this is her This is either her first year or second year. Maybe it's her second year. And she's kind of been saying like, I just don't even know if this is for me.
Yeah.
Like, and you hear it. People go through, I think second year is probably even harder than your first year. But she said, I just don't know if it's for me. But, as we've talked, I've said, let's just give it a little bit more time and think about all of these lessons that you are learning and how you're going to be able to show up for your people in a different and better way because of these things. And then for some people, it's just not meant to be for them. And that's okay. But let's say that someone picks up your book, Cup of Courage. What is a powerful lesson that you would hope that a leader would take to heart?
It's a good question. I think a lesson that I would appreciate someone taking away from the book, and I think it would give me so much joy if someone took this from the book, would be that it's not about having all the right answers. That, leadership's not about your position. It's not about the privilege or the title or any of the things that go along with being a leader. It's about being a servant and having servant leadership. About when we talk about courage, particularly in serving, having the courage to ask the right questions, to not be afraid to ask the right questions, to be bold, take risks, and trust the process. And I think, real leadership starts where your comfort zone ends. And in education, that is not always a comfortable thing to say. People really like their comfort zone. People, and I am all for self-care. I'm all for work-life balance to a point. When you're a leader, I think you're a servant first, and you have to sometimes sacrifice for your building. I think it's just part of being a servant. But I think for me, if I wanted somebody to take a piece away from the book, it would be, think about your own personal situations and how you might want to be treated in a building, and model that with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about courage when it comes to teams, because we've kind of talked about that individual level as a leader, but how can they instill a culture of courage in their teams, especially in these very high pressure environments that we've kind of talked about really throughout this episode?
Well, I would say if you're not communicating, you're not going to be effective. If you don't spend time together, you're not going to be effective. If things are only in an email or only in a chat room or a memo, you're not going to be as effective. You cannot silo and be as effective as possible. If you're a team, you have to collaborate. And I think, as the leader, we set the tone for that. And so, I have to model resilience with my team, and also try to really model that setbacks are just a setup for your comeback, right? It's okay to make mistakes. I am not the type of leader who is going to, come down so hard on someone for a mistake. We're going to learn from it. We're going to do better. We're going to improve. We're going to talk about it. It's okay to talk about that. And it's okay for everyone to come to the meeting vulnerable and also know that they're valued. And my leadership team, for example, we meet weekly and we do collaborative planning. Sometimes I'll even just put a topic on the agenda for discussion so that we can hear the discussion from all the players in the game. I don't just silo it to one particular department. Afterwards, sure, we'll assign action items and things like that. But to make sure that we're all on the same page and debrief. And so every week we also start with celebrations. And so talking about the good things that are going on, professional growth as well, ways that our staff can learn from their mistakes if we have them. and growth points from previous years and things like that, and just allow for discussion. I oftentimes will collaborate with my APs too, and give them an opportunity to have input rather than just top down leadership, even if it makes me feel vulnerable. And healthy disagreement is okay. Seeing things from another perspective is okay. It's actually a good thing. It can help you come to a decision that you may not have otherwise if you hadn't heard somebody else's opinion. And so, I really believe in giving everyone the opportunity to contribute. And at the beginning of all of our meetings and on the side of our agenda, I have a statement on our agenda, and it says, I am a member of a high valued team doing meaningful work in an environment of trust. And that's on my agenda every single week. And we talk about it all the time. We talk about it with our staff frequently too, that they are valued. It's a meaningful environment and a high trust environment for them to lead.
Yeah. And that's you continuously casting vision, because casting vision is not a one-time thing. It is ongoing. And it sounds like what you're doing is creating vision carriers with that modeling and example. If a leader is listening to this, and chances are several people who are listening are feeling overwhelmed or stuck, what do you feel like is their first next step they could take to build that grit muscle and lead more confidently?
Pour a cup of coffee. That's step one. Honestly, and it's sitting right here. If my cup is not full, I cannot fill other people's cups. So figuratively and literally, get some caffeine because you might need it. But also take a second. It's okay to take a second and think. We had a situation 2 school years ago where we were in a certain project and we weren't sure if that space was going to be ready and ready for students to open in the fall. And I remember we were all panicked and everybody's freaking out. What are we going to do? And then I said, okay, I just need a minute. And all I did was go into my office, turn on my Keurig, get the coffee going. It wasn't even brewed yet. I went to the bathroom. I splashed my face with some water, and I was like, okay, I have a plan. And I came back out. Everyone's like, what happened to you? I was like, I just needed a minute. And sometimes that's okay, especially if there's a high pressure situation. You don't have to feel like you have to answer all the time. Sometimes just a good night's sleep is enough for you to come back with a sound mind. I always encourage people to lean on a network too. If you have a network of support, administration can feel extremely isolating, especially if you're in a private school or a charter school that doesn't have a network or district, a larger district to support, where you have people in similar positions. And so if you don't have that network, I would encourage leaders to find one, whether that's through, an alliance in their state or an association for administrators and things like that. And to attend those professional developments, go to the conferences, collaborate with other people, because you oftentimes find that you're in the same situation as somebody on the other side of wherever. And then you've got someone you can talk to and field questions with. And my district, my authorizer currently, we have a leadership cohort. It's incredible. We tour schools in state, out of state, and internationally, which is really exciting. So last year we had the opportunity to go to London and tour schools and their models and take back information to our schools, particularly a lot about culture and behavior and engagement, which was really cool. And in about 3 weeks, we're headed to Stockholm, Sweden. This trip is all about math, so that we can try to help address the math crisis going on in the U.S. Sweden has some of the highest math performance internationally. And so I'm so excited to see what they do and learn from people that think differently than us, and a culture that's different than ours, and see what we can bring back. But having the ability to participate in a network, regardless of how big or how small it is, not everybody's traveling internationally. I totally get that. And this group, particularly for us, is new and has really started to catch fire. And I think it's because you're putting like-minded people together who are there for kids and want to improve and do the best and be the best and provide the best for their students. And so I think, really leaning into those networks is so important. And for leaders, I think sometimes that can be outside of your building, and that's okay, because you as a principal are the only one.
Mm-hmm.
You're it. And that can be a lonely feeling. And so, just kind of, back to the question, the first step they can do to build their grit muscle, I would say, do something for yourself. Just a quick thing. It can even be a 5-minute thing to help you take a breath, and then just do the next right thing, like one thing at a time, one decision at a time. If you need support, reach out and get that support. But the daily choices to show up, do the right thing, do the thing that sometimes is more difficult, but is right, is the thing to do. And stay caffeinated, for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And what else can they do if they're leaning into you and your work? Where can they find you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm excited because a lot of those things are new, but if there's a reader that's interested in reading my book, I think I have it right here, actually. It's Cup of Courage, like we talked about. It looks like this: The Key to Leading with Grace and Grit. It is on Amazon currently, and it is a very quick guide. It's an easy read. I really felt like, what do principals need? Not another novel. They need to know it, get it, say it. And so it's a very fast guide. So I'd encourage you to reach out, especially if you're a new leader, for that, and check it out on Amazon. I also blog on leadershipwithalatte.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at leadershipwithalatte.
Yes. And I love the picture of you, Julianne, on Instagram, because you've got that coffee mug and you're just sitting there. And I'm like, okay, we could hang out like this. Yeah. We could talk shop over a cup of coffee for
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Listeners, I would love for you guys to share what you feel like was most useful for you here in this episode. And like I said before, grab the book, leave a review. And I'll tell you this too, while you're leaving a review for Julianne's new book, you can leave a review for this show and share it with a like-minded colleague. With all of that said, Julianne, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, we will catch you in the next episode. Bye. Hey there, thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends, and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.